The vast, serene wilderness of the Rocky Mountains had always been a sanctuary for adventurers seeking solace from the modern world. The rugged terrain, punctuated by sharp peaks and dense forests, held an air of mystery that called to those brave enough to explore its hidden paths. Among these adventurers were 3 experienced hikers, Mark, Sarah, and Tom. They had conquered many trails together, but this time they were determined to chart a course through an unexplored section of the range, one whispered about in local legends. As they ascended higher into the mountains, the trio felt the excitement of the unknown tingling in their veins. The higher they climbed, the more they noticed the odd absence of wildlife, the unnerving silence that seemed to envelop the forest around them. But with every step, they brushed off their discomfort, attributing it to their anticipation of the adventure that lay ahead. Little did they know, they were venturing into a territory that had not seen human footprints for centuries, a place where legends of otherworldly beings were not just stories, but warnings. Chapter 1: The Start of the Journey. Mark, Sarah, and Tom began their trek early in the morning, the first rays of sunlight cutting through the chilly dawn air. They were well prepared, carrying maps, climbing gear, and enough supplies for several days. Their goal was to reach a hidden valley that had never been documented on any official maps, a place Sarah had discovered while poring over ancient indigenous folklore. The first day was uneventful, filled with breathtaking views and the camaraderie that only close friends on an adventure could share. As they set up camp that evening, they talked excitedly about the untouched beauty of the landscape around them. However, as the night wore on, they began to feel a growing sense of unease. The usual sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of nocturnal animals were absent. Instead, there was a deep, unnatural silence that seemed to press in on them from all sides. Chapter 2: The Ominous Signs. The next morning, the group continued their journey, but the eerie silence from the night before lingered in their minds. The trail they followed grew more difficult, winding through narrow passes and steep cliffs. The weather, which had been clear and bright, began to shift. Dark clouds rolled in, casting an ominous shadow over the mountains. As they moved deeper into the unexplored territory, they began to notice strange markings on the rocks and trees, intricate symbols that none of them could decipher. They appeared ancient, worn down by time, yet there was something disturbingly fresh about them, as if they were a warning meant for those who dared to intrude. Mark, usually the most skeptical of the group, dismissed the symbols as remnants of an ancient civilization, perhaps the indigenous tribes that once roamed these mountains. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something or someone was aware of their presence. Chapter 3: The First Encounter. By the afternoon, the hikers found themselves at the edge of a large plateau. In the distance, they could see what appeared to be the entrance to the hidden valley Sarah had talked about. Excitement began to replace their earlier trepidation as they made their way toward it. But as they approached the entrance, they saw something that made their blood run cold. Standing on the rocky outcrop, partially hidden by the shadows of the mountains, was a figure unlike anything they had ever seen. It was tall and slender, with a humanoid shape, but its skin was smooth and pale, almost translucent. Its large black eyes glistened in the dim light, reflecting the surrounding landscape. The creature stood motionless, as if observing the hikers. Mark instinctively reached for his camera, but before he could take a picture, the being turned and disappeared into the darkness of the valley. The group was stunned into silence. Tom was the first to speak, his voice shaking as he suggested they turn back. But Sarah, driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, insisted they follow the creature. She believed that this was the moment they had come for, a chance to uncover the truth behind the ancient legends. Chapter 4: The Descent into Darkness. Against Tom's better judgment, the group entered the valley. The air inside was thick and heavy, almost suffocating. As they ventured deeper, the path became more treacherous, and the light from the outside world dimmed until it was almost pitch black. The only sound was the echo of their footsteps and the distant drip of water from unseen sources. Suddenly, they came upon a cavernous opening in the mountain, a natural tunnel leading down into the earth. The symbols they had seen earlier were etched into the walls of the tunnel, glowing faintly as if guiding them forward. Mark, Sarah, and Tom hesitated at the entrance, their flashlights barely penetrating the darkness. But Sarah, compelled by an unseen force, stepped forward. She felt an inexplicable pull, as if something was calling her deeper into the mountain. As they descended, the tunnel began to widen, revealing a massive underground chamber. At the center of the chamber was a structure that looked both ancient and alien, a fusion of natural rock and advanced technology. Strange lights flickered along its surface, casting eerie shadows across the cavern. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a low, humming noise that seemed to come from the structure itself. The hikers felt a vibration in the ground beneath their feet, growing stronger with each passing second. Then, without warning, the entire chamber was illuminated by a blinding light. Chapter 5: The Revelation. The light was so intense that the hikers had to shield their eyes. When it finally dimmed, they found themselves surrounded by beings similar to the one they had seen earlier. But these were not solitary figures. They moved with a purpose, their actions synchronized as if they were part of a hive mind. The leader of the group stepped forward, communicating not through words, but through images and emotions that flooded the hikers' minds. They saw visions of the Earth from space, of civilizations rising and falling, of these beings watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The aliens conveyed a message of warning. Something was coming, something far more dangerous than they were. The hikers had inadvertently stumbled upon a hidden sanctuary, a place where these beings had been preparing for an impending invasion by a malevolent force from the stars. Chapter 6: The Escape. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the hikers knew they had to leave the valley and warn the world. But as they turned to retrace their steps, the ground shook violently. The structure in the chamber began to pulse with energy, and the tunnel they had come through started to collapse. Panic set in as they raced against time to escape the underground chamber. The beings did not try to stop them. Instead, they seemed to be helping, guiding them toward a hidden exit. Just as they reached the surface, the entire valley was consumed by a massive explosion of light and sound, sealing off the entrance forever. Chapter 7: The Aftermath. The hikers emerged from the mountains, shaken but alive. They knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would change the world forever. But as they reached civilization, they found themselves confronted by a new challenge: how to tell their story in a way that people would believe. They agreed to document their experience, to share the evidence they had gathered, but they also knew that the true danger was still out there, lurking in the shadows of space, waiting to strike. And so, their story became a warning to all who would listen, that we are not alone in the universe, and that the greatest threat may not come from the stars, but from the silence that follows. Chapter 1: The Encounter. The arid desert stretched infinitely, the oppressive heat rising in visible waves off the cracked golden earth. A convoy of armored military vehicles rumbled across the barren landscape, the distant mountains standing as silent sentinels against the endless sky. The air was thick with tension, a palpable anxiety that clung to the soldiers like the dust kicked up by their boots. They had trained for this moment, yet nothing could have prepared them for the encounter that awaited them. As the convoy approached a remote, previously uncharted section of the desert, a shimmering distortion appeared in the sky. The soldiers watched in a mixture of awe and dread as the air seemed to tear open, revealing a massive disc-shaped craft. The silence was deafening as the craft descended with an almost ethereal grace, settling onto the desert floor with a low hum that reverberated through the ground. The soldiers dismounted, their weapons at the ready, hearts pounding in their chests. Their commander, a grizzled veteran with a steely gaze, gave the order to spread out and approach with caution. The tension was electric,